This episode is sponsored by Smart Travel, a new podcast from NerdWallet. You know that one friend who always finds the best travel deals, picks the right cards, and somehow ends up in first class for the price of coach? How do they do that? Well, Smart Travel is like that friend, but in podcast form. They cover all things travel finance, like which travel cards earn their keep and which are just heavy, shiny metal, and planning group trips that won't ruin your budget or your friendships. So travel smarter and spend less. That's the key with help from NerdWallet. Follow Smart Travel wherever you get your podcasts. Armchair-Explorer is a part of the Voyescape podcast network. Check out all of their shows from around the world at voyescape.com. Hey guys, welcome to Armchair-Explorer. My name's Aaron Miller. I'm a travel writer and your host. And today we're going to do one of our connection episodes. These are our in-depth interviews with some of the people that I think are doing the most interesting things in the world of travel and adventure. But this one's also kind of a bucket list episode because we're diving back into tropical North Queensland as part of our Australia series. And I mean, literally diving. We're going to be speaking with Dr. Eric Fisher. He's a marine biologist and master reef guide about his favorite place on Earth, the Great Barrier Reef. I've always wanted to go there. I love diving, and obviously this is one of the best places on Earth. And he's one of the best guides on Earth too. Eric, by the way, is known as the Yoda of coral fish, which is a fantastic nickname. And presumably it's because wise in the ways of the reef he is. He's involved with a number of different travel and conservation projects and companies. I'll put some details of that at the end of the show and in the show notes. But the one I want to shout out now is called Reef Magic. And the reason is he's going to tell us about something called Dreamtime Dives. In Aboriginal culture, the Dreamtime is, of course, I'm sure you guys have heard of it, at the core of their spiritual beliefs and practices. It's that kind of timeless period before creation where the world sprung into existence. So Dreamtime diving and snorkeling is a really cool concept. I've never heard of that before because it combines First Nation perspectives on the reef with modern science in a really, really powerful and innovative way. And I've managed to get you guys a bit of a discount if you want to try it out. So listen for that at the end. But don't worry about that just yet because we're about to dive beneath the waves. And to set things up, I'm just going to share something I wrote a while ago. It was for a book I did called The 50 Greatest Wonders of the World. And this is from the chapter about the Great Barrier Reef. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest reef system in the world, covering an area of 135,000 square miles. It is bigger than the United Kingdom, Holland, and Switzerland combined. It stretches for 18,000 miles along the Queensland coast, and if you were to lay it out across Europe, it would reach from London to Moscow, making it the largest living structure in the world and the only one visible from outer space. It's ancient too. Generation after generation of coral has grown on top of its predecessors, creating an enormous wall of stone up to 40 miles wide. The thin layer of living coral on its tip is at least 6,000 years old, comprised of the largest collection of coral species on the planet, 1/3 of the world's total. But while most reefs alive today are estimated to be less than 10,000 years old, the Great Barrier Reef began forming a staggering 18 million years ago. And besides these corals and under these waves are more than 11,000 individual species, 1,500 types of fish, roughly 10% of the world's total, 30 varieties of whales and dolphins, more than 100 types of sharks and rays, 6 species of turtles, 100 jellyfish, 4,000 mollusks, as well as sea crocodiles, and lots more. And that's what makes it great, its size and its diversity. Here's Eric with how to see it in the Dreamtime.
I call myself a Cairns local, but I grew up basically just a little bit south of here, about 40 kilometres, on the mouth of 2 rivers There's a spit of land. You can only get there by boat, so I had to travel to school every day in a boat, things like that. My whole weekends were spent running around, around the mangroves, the rainforest, the islands, the reef. And to me, they were all just basically the one playground, so to speak. But the first time I actually saw a coral reef, I was around about 4 years old. I was with my parents. We went out to a reef to go fishing just off where we lived. And I just remember, from the outside looking in, just the various shades of blues and greens and all that just struck me. And you could actually see the coral underneath, down about 10 metres below on the bottom. Catching my first fish at that time, a coral trout, which is this vibrant red thing with beautiful blue dots. So it was incredible, and of course it probably led me on the path that I am today, yeah, that's for sure.
I can remember vividly as well, I was a lot older, that first moment when I went beneath the waves, when I learned how to scuba dive and kind of went beneath the waves properly. And it was this kind of quite profound moment in a way of going, there is an entire different universe here that, you just wouldn't even know exists, if you spent your whole life on the land. So for people that have never experienced that moment, have you had something like that? How would you describe it?
To be honest, have it every time I'm on the reef. Literally every time I'm there. Every time I duck my head under the water, whether it's snorkeling or diving, I get blown away. You see something different every day. And the biggest thing that I love is the temporal change on a Great Barrier Reef. And when you're talking change, a reef literally changes by the minute. All right, you can see it change right in your front of your eyes. Fish are moving, time of day, current direction, all these kind of things. But what I really do like when I'm looking at it is when you're looking at one moment in time, you're looking at a tidal difference. You're looking at a lunar thing. You're looking at a seasonal moment, and you're looking at probably a change in decade, and you're getting all those snapshots in that 1 minute. And 5 minutes after that, it's completely different, right? And that's, I can take you to spots on the reef, put you on what we call an outer edge where the coral reef meets the open water, go to a fish aggregation site where you can get fish in thousands that turn up there to aggregate for various reasons, big gatherings of fish, very driven by the tide. We can be there 5 minutes before when the tide's going out, snorkeling around, and it's like a graveyard. And literally, as soon as that tidal change, you're just watching fish in their hundreds and thousands coming to that area. And 15 minutes later, you wouldn't believe it's the same spot. And to me, that's what the Great Barrier Reef is in a nutshell. That can happen if you're on an island. You can be out there in the wonderful Fitzroy Island, just sitting, not even in the water, just maybe being there with your kids, sitting on the rubble beach, on the coral rubble, playing with actual, things that were made by animals, sitting there, clear water, looking out, and there's little baby black-tip sharks cruising by. I remember one day I was over there at a workshop, and I'm not one of these people that sleep a lot. And I was up early and walking on the beach, and I'm watching a turtle and a stingray and a small group of trevally in less than a foot of water and 5 centimetres from the beach, all interacting with one another. And you're just wow, that's the kind of stuff that just makes you look up and go, this is just amazing. Everything's like that. I get asked, it's pouring rain behind me, things like that. It's overcast. People will be turning up on the boat, and they'll be going there and go, I don't know if it's going to be great today. It's going to be one like that. What do you think? It's always amazing on the Great Barrier Reef. Yeah, my friends and they wind me up about it all the time and joke, because I actually do really believe that.
Yeah, and that's and you still get it. I think it would be very easy for someone that had been out to the reef for probably thousands of times, and it's your job to lose that. But it's amazing that you still have that sense of wonder about it.
Most definitely, and what I really love too is I'm not the only one. There's lots of people like that. I had the pleasure the other day to have he's a friend of mine, but, a great cinematographer, and staying out on the pontoon to capture a bit of footage and use a pontoon, which is also a research station. And we were both in there, and the visibility wasn't great. We were joking and laughing about it. You know, it's like a bright green, which it can be at this time of year after big floods and all that. But it was just amazing, the simple thing, like we come out and go like, oh, that fish, you know, did you see that fish or did you see that turtle? Or we're sitting there at night time going, oh, we'll turn the lights on, look at the plankton. You know, the plankton just coming up. We were like two little kids at a candy store. You sit down with this 4K, like, you know, 4K camera trying to capture this, and I'm looking and go, oh, look, man, that's a fish larvae. And, you know, so this stuff, it doesn't go away, but it's kind of in everyone, to be honest. And that's the other reason why I do love tourism. I love the people that come to visit the reef, and I love them how they want to know more and how they want to experience. And it's seeing them have that similar kind of reaction is kind of what I think also makes the Great Barrier Reef very special. It's not just the reef, but it's also the people that rely on it. And everyone, you know, all around the world, if you're visiting, come and see the reef. It's going to get its hooks into you. And that, I find, never gets boring either. And that's the other nice element.
Eric started working as a reef guide about 20 years ago. They would operate off a big pontoon out on the reef. But over the years, his concept for what reef snorkels and dives could and should be about changed. What if the pontoon could be more than just a platform for adventure? What if it could be a base for science too? So they built a new pontoon, totally modern. It's got all sorts of cool stuff like moon pools and hydraulic lifts to drop snorkelers and divers in the water. But what's really special about it is how that initial dream of pure science is evolving into something much, much bigger.
We've had so many talented researchers and cinematographers out there, and you don't know what you're going to get. You could walk on Reef Magic Pontoon, go out in the lab there one day, and you might be talking to an Emmy award-winning cinematographer. You could be talking to an early career researcher that's leading the field in the way we look at coral rubble beds. You could be talking to a gentleman from CSIRO on about how we're using robots and artificial intelligence to map a reef. And it's not just about the science, it's also about the First Nations culture. And that's what I'm really proud of, what my department does well, GBR Biology. Basically, you're telling the story through the cultural and the biology lens. So you get both sides of the story. And the Great Barrier Reef has a wonderful story to tell.
Yeah, I really love the idea of mixing proper scientific research with people able to come and enjoy it. I just feel like there's going to be so much energy that happens in that crossover. And I want to follow up with something about that in a second as well. But the First Nations culture in the reef, is that something you can speak to at all? I know you have First Nations guides, but is that something you can speak to?
Totally. I'm not First Nations, but I have been working really closely with the local First Nations groups in Cairns here for a bit over 10 years now. And our partnership started with our reef education programs, trying to get basically more school kids onto the Great Barrier Reef. But what the teachers were telling us was do you do anything on First Nations elements or First Nations perspective? Which led to having our First Nation Rangers or culture guides on the boat, which led into Dreamtime Dive and Snorkel. We're trying to really push that First Nations story in tourism, which is also now leapt over into Reef Magic and our other businesses. But those partnerships, they just keep growing. We set up a project to combine First Nations ecological knowledge with scientific knowledge to look at how we look at a reef and how we make decisions if we want to do conservation actions. So considering both sides, we incorporated culture through seasonal calendars so people can see land and sea connections. Things like plants flowering on the land are indicators of say turtles mating or corals spawning or whales turning up or cold times, windy times. So having that incorporation of knowledge, so very passionate about what the First Nations bring to. They are the first scientists, first inventors, and what they bring to this space. And all I want to do is to try to just keep fostering those partnerships and fostering those relationships, but let them transfer over into what our valued guests see every day as well. And that's why I think it's very important having this. So if we run a science project on the reef, you might have one of our biologists, but you'll get one of our First Nations culture guides, and you'll have both, and that's like, if you're going on just to experience a tour, you'll get a biology tour and you'll get a cultural perspective too. And I think that is one of the most unique things and something that we're very proud of, being able to, to foster and grow and still keep growing in this space.
I love that so much. It's quite an enlightened perspective in many ways. You don't see enough of that, but I think sometimes people that were taking that scientific approach might talk about the indigenous perspective on it in terms of like myths and legends, but wouldn't necessarily put it on that same platform as science. And I think introducing those two things together is a really powerful idea. I think that I don't see much of that at all.
Yeah. And a lot of things I do, I like to kind of strip it back to basics. Like my real passion in biology, and I think one of the big drivers of science is like science based off looking at patterns in nature based off frequent observations, having all this observational data. And it's some of the most powerful science in the world. But that same principle of taking frequent observations every day, this is what First Nations did originally, taking the same observation, looking at patterns. On that side of the fence, you would call it trial and error. On the scientific side, you would call it hypothesis testing. Literally, where do we get the principle from? Right? It's the same thing, right? And that's what we're really trying to push. And what I'm loving is how much people are starting to go back to First Nations and ask, well, what do you know? What do you know about this? And a great example of this is we designed these like 3 site stewardship plans for 3 reefs that Dreamtime Dive visit in Irukandji Sea Country. And one of these reefs we wanted to put reef stars on as a conservation action to stabilise rubble. And a question I kept getting back from the people going, or how can you prove for how many decades that reef has had a disturbance, right? So I'm like, well, we only have data for so much years. So I went to Gavin and for the Irukandji, I say, could we do some surveys or do some workshops with the elders to see what they know about these reefs, right? And they did, and they didn't tell us much about rubble. But interesting, what I did find, that one of the uncles, he was going out to one of the reefs here off Cairns in the 50s, and he was associating large patches of dead coral with these like big spiky starfish, which are quite famous. Everyone knows crown of thorn starfish, like coral predators, endemic part of the reef. The first reported starfish outbreak on the Great Barrier Reef from a Western science point of view is 1962. Uncle was talking about in the early 50s. And this was saying, that knowledge, although it's still only decades ago, but there is a lot of knowledge that keeps getting passed down. And that should never be dismissed. It is right up the top. The important thing we need to do is to build respect and trust and partnerships with the First Nations groups. Then we can totally see that, like, that science fully emerge, fully combine with what we're doing, and we'll just move forward better together as people on this planet.
I love this so much. I knew we were going to talk about the Great Barrier Reef, and I'm really excited for that. But this has gone into such a deeper, almost more important kind of philosophical piece about knowledge. No. I love going deep on stuff, and I think that's a really beautiful thing, and I'd be really proud to share a small bit of that, because I think you're exactly right. We don't have enough of that, and if we can combine those two ways of knowing, I think that maybe that'll be all the better for us, especially when it comes to things like conservation. But just because we've talked about that Dreamtime dive and it sounds so awesome, I kind of want to see it through the eyes of like a guest. Like, what are they seeing? What are they doing on that tour?
Everything we do on the reef, it's about the reef. The Great Barrier Reef is its own character, its own living being. It's in the psyche of everybody. We all rely on it to some extent. First Nations quite deeply, us social economics deeply, food, protection. It's incredible, right? So anything we do on the reef, it's first and foremost about the reef. But how do you tell that reef story, right? Yeah, the reef's telling its story, but you need its interpreters. So you got the biologist there, can tell you the biology side. So you need the First Nations culture guides there too. So Dreamtime is settled on doing that from both those lenses, big focus on that First Nations lens. So we're talking about why the reef is so important to First Nations. But if you're in the water, if you're seeing a turtle, and a turtle is an amazing animal, you'll get another layer going, turtles are beautiful, they are amazing. But it could be someone's totem animal, and this is what it means as a totem, you know? And we got, like, how we judge seasons is based on when this turtle turns and shows up, which could be linked to when we hunt here or don't hunt there. And you're getting these different layers to a story where a biologist might go, yeah, this is a green sea turtle, it's a resident turtle, you know, easy to tell turtles. They've got four, they feed on the grass, they do amazing things, you know, they're in between both worlds. So layering stories is what we work at every day or trying to achieve. But with Dreamtime Dive, it's pushing that First Nations culture right up to the top. So you're getting that lens first, then the other layers around, but not taking anything away from the Great Barrier Reef, because that's why we're all here.
I absolutely love that so much, Eric. And you know what it strikes me as well is you mentioned right at the beginning, all these different variables that come into play to create like a single moment at a part of the reef that will never happen again. And, you know, modern science is so good at so many things, but it doesn't always show like the interconnectedness of stuff as clearly as some other cultures do. And when you talk about that turtle and what it could mean here and what it means seasonally, and I get a sense of that in a really beautiful way.
Yeah, and like I say, these patterns are there. It's us trying to interpret these patterns, what they mean, right? And they're there for a reason, right? They're there so life can persist, right? And that's what I do like, and that's what I'm always a glass halfway full type of bloke. But I mean, to me, that's always the optimist, that life will always find a way, you know? And there's a lot of doom and gloom that goes with reefs. And, you know, with the way the world is going with climate change, and that is also true. Greatest pressure on the reef is climate change, right? It possibly can be changing, causing so many disturbances, that's making it harder for the reef to catch up every time something happens. But what I look at, and the pure simplicity sometimes, and I just did this the other day when I was on the back of a boat and we're attaching coral fragments to a reef star, and I'm there with the First Nations culture guide, Freddie as well, you know, and the both of us there, we're showing people, and we're touching coral, and they're going like, what will that coral do? How quickly will it grow? And I'm like, if it's stable, it will grow 5 times that size within about 6 months. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I said, this is the thing about coral. I mean, these things make their own habitat. You haven't got any other animal in the world that does that. You think of all our other big ecosystems. You know, you're looking at rainforests or, you know, bushlands or savannas. That we talked about the size of the Great Barrier Reef, but also reefs all around the world. Animals made that. And they go, I said, look, have a look at this reef. We're on a small reef. It only goes for 4 kilometres, right? This one little patch reef that we're on, you can see you can see the end over there. That's all made from coral, and it's continuing to make that every day. It's only limited by the surface. It can't grow out. So when I look at how simple that life is, like a simple little jellyfish, an upside down jellyfish that makes its own home, right? Which ends up making homes on massive scales that support a huge, incredible diversity of life. To me, that always gives me hope, realistic hope.
Well, I want your job. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I can't wait to see you out there on the reef one of these days soon.
Oh, I'd love to take you, mate. We'll go and check out some fish aggregations. It'd be awesome.
Sounds great. I don't know about you, but I'm so inspired by the work that Eric's doing, because I think that if we get it right, if the traditional wisdom of indigenous people around the world, not just here in Australia, can inform the way that we approach environmental science, And we're going to create something new, a kind of middle path, which will allow us to blend these two ways of thinking, the modern, precise knowledge of science with the ancient, interconnected wisdom of the First Nations people of the world. So thank you again to Eric, the Yoda of coral fish. His company is called Reef Magic, and I've got a deal for you. If you fancy going on your own Dreamtime dive, you can get 15% off if you head over to reefmagic.com.au and type in the promo code armchair-exp. That's armchair-exp, and Reef Magic is the website to search up. I also want to shout out again Down Under Endeavours for partnering with us on this episode. They are the tropical North Queensland experts. They helped connect us with Eric, actually. He was their recommendation, and it was a great one. So if you fancy building this experience into a broader itinerary, a bigger trip around the region, you can. Just go to downunderendeavours.com. Everything you need is up there. You can drop them a line, tell them we sent you, and you can also check out our Tropical North Queensland Discover Guide that came out last month. Lots and lots of inspiration on other things you can do there that you can build in, from river drifting in rainforests to learning how to spearfish with an Aboriginal guide. So downunderendeavours.com for planning that next Australian adventure. So that's about it for now. Thanks for listening. Keep dreaming and keep exploring, because the more you look for wonder in the world, the more the wonder of the world becomes a part of who we are. Dare to be truly alive. This episode was produced by Armchair Productions, the audio experts for the travel industry. Find out more at armchair-productions.com. I wrote and produced the episode, Charles Tyree did the audio editing and sound design, and our lead producer is Jason Patton. We'll see you next time.
Quick question. Do you want travel tips from people who have actually been there?
Our show is co-hosted by Tim Johnson, an award-winning travel journalist who's been to more than 145 countries around the world. And I'm David Brody, the other co-host who's been travel podcasting for 20 years while traveling to 50-plus countries around the world.
In about 10 or 20 minutes per show, we break down a destination with the kind of insight you usually only get from long guidebooks or hours of research.
So if you want expert advice, zero fluff, and travel inspiration that you can actually use, search for Travel in 10 wherever you listen to podcasts, or you can also find us at boyescape.com.
Hi, I'm Pauline Fromer, host of the Fromer's Travel Podcast. We post new episodes weekly, detailing the kinds of money-saving tips and cultural insights that will make your trips richer without making you significantly poorer. We do so by interviewing real travel experts like TV host Samantha Brown, Fromer's authors from around the globe, and such public figures as Free Solo's Alex Honnold. It's a fun travel party. I hope you can join us.